never you BGM back in this thing. Hey, so there's been a lot of rise of Final Fantasy in the local area for me. I know GameStop's now selling Final Fantasy packs. So that's a really good sign for the game as a whole. I'm really happy about that. But I wanted to kind of give a breakdown of the game itself and then give you a little personal information about myself at the end. So stay tuned towards the end to learn more about New Never You. So the game is about crystals. So crystals. But really, the game is about you. You are the warrior of light. You are using these different people from different universes, different worlds, different games to build a deck of 50 cards, no more, no less, and craft the strategy of your own to essentially win the game. So the game is based off of elemental properties. So you have fire, ice, wind, earth, lightning, water, light, and darkness. So up here, the top left corner of every card is going to be some form of cost. There's going to be a number and then a color of crystal. The crystal signifies, or the color of the crystal signifies what element it is. So right now we're looking at an Orin, he's fire. You also see a fire emblem, which also matches this fire emblem. Blue, I guess light blue is ice, green is wind, yellow is earth, purple is lightning, a little darker blue is water, light is light, and dark is kind of grayish. So every time you want to play a card, you have to pay this cost. Now, if you discard a card from your hand, it counts as 2 of whatever element that you discard. Light and dark do not generate any form of CP, so you can't discard them to cover any cost unless there's a card on the field that says you can do as such, but those are very few and far in between. Now, excuse me, there are a bunch of cards that do things on the field. There's a couple cards that do things in the hand, and I'll go over that as well and further down the video. So forwards are going to be your attackers and your blockers. So their power lies here at the bottom right of the card. So you can think of this as their attack and their defense. So they are there to protect you from taking damage. Once you take 7 points of damage, you lose the game. Or if you run out of cards to draw, you lose the game as well. So forwards are kind of just like your line of defense. Think of them as rooks, pawns. Just to give you a cleaner idea. You can have as many forwards on the field as you want. So that's great. So let's go with this Godot. Let's say we have Godot, Cloud, and Zack in our hand. We want to play the Godot because when he enters the field, you may play 1 fire forward of cost 2 or less from your hand onto the field. When he enters the field, all forwards you control gain 1,000 attack. So let's say we want to play Godot, so we can play Cloud for free. So we will discard Zack to generate 2 fire CP to play Godot. He comes in like this, straight up. His ability will activate, his auto ability, and then if nothing stops it, he gets to play Cloud or any other 2-cost CP card that's fire for free. And then if Cloud has an auto ability when he enters the field, which he does, when Cloud enters the field, choose 1 for your opponent controls, deal it 2k. So that would be what you call a combo. Now, obviously, if they're there to attack or defend, they don't generate resources typically outside of that. When they hit the field, they have this thing called summoning sickness, is generally what the the term for it, but it really just means it has to settle before it can attack, unless it has the keyword haste, which Tifa has it, meaning that this character can attack or use abilities containing the dull icon in the cost the turn that it enters the field. Neither of these have haste, so they wouldn't be able to attack. But if there is another card you have on the field that gives them haste, they can attack, even if it's your first turn. When you attack, things happen. Your opponent can either activate a summon, they can block if they have a forward up that's not dull. I'll tell you what dull means in a second. And then, if the attack goes through, you deal damage to your opponent. 1 point of damage, unless specifically stated by the card, abilities, or whatever. When you attack, the card goes sideways, so it just dulls, which is this little icon here. And you just turn it vertical. And that is pretty much it for the forward. Now, it gets deeper than that, but I'm just giving you a consensus on how things play out. And I will, I'll pull up some EX bursts in a moment, but we'll go over that in a second. Now, backups. Backups work the same as forwards as far as playing them, but backups also generate whatever element they have one of whenever they so a better example is, think of backups as if you're playing something like Farmville or Final Fantasy 14 where you're harvesting materials. Think of backups as something that's constantly giving you materials so you can build better resources. So backups, they always come in dull, so they always come in vertical. And then on the following turn, your following turn there, before you draw, there's called an active phase. That active phase is going to turn all your backups and your forwards to horizontal. Now, if you want to generate a CP of fire, even though size it took 3 to play him, you dull him, turning him vertical, he'll generate 1 fire CP. Obviously, there are abilities that can be dulled if you dull them, but that's pretty much what backups do. You can only have 5 backups at any given time, but you can play as many as you want to, up to 5 whenever you can, but you can never have more than 5 as of right now. And that's pretty much it for backups. Backups are really just your resource management. Generally, you want to have 5 as soon as possible because that's less that you have to throw away from your hand. And of course, backups have abilities just like forwards, and some are more useful than others in any given situation. And once a card leaves the field, if it's not returning your hand, it goes to the break zone. The break zone is kind of like the graveyard. If you've played Yu-Gi-Oh! Or, it's the thing right next to your deck that you can either use as facilitating fodder if you have cards that go into the break zone. If not, they just kind of just stay there. So I think we're done with those. Next is going to be monsters. Monsters are a mix between forwards and backups, and I say that because monsters come in vertical, so they don't come in. They come in horizontal, so they don't come in dull, but they can use their abilities that have the dull icon as if they had haste. Some monsters can become forwards. You can have as many monsters on the field as you want, but some of them give you extra boosts, like this one. Let's say you played 2 backups this turn, and obviously they come in dull. When Ochu enters the field, choose up to 2 backups, activate them. So you could pitch another card to play Ochu, and it would activate the 2 backups you just played, meaning that you could use those 2 backups now to generate CP, or or yeah, generates EP to either play another card, such as a forward or a backup, or a summon. So monsters are really useful because a lot of cards don't really target monsters, so that kind of keeps you safe. And then there's some of them at damage 3 that you can choose to make them forwards, so they could be blockers if you don't have any forwards. So monsters are really useful, and that's really all I can give you about monsters as far as a crash course. But I like monsters. Monsters are really good. Next is going to be summons. So summons can be used anytime that you have priority. They never hit the field. They go straight to the break zone once the stack is over. The stack is kind of like a chain link in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think it's also called the stack in Magic. But you let's say I play that Cloud or this Gipple, and it has an ability when Gipple enters the field, all forwards you control gain 4K. I gain priority in that moment, so I can stack on something if I wanted to, or give priority to my opponent and they do something, then I can stack onto that to either counter it or make it more difficult for them or benefit myself. And each forward is gonna have, each summon is gonna have a different ability. So just go through and kind of just spec out all the summons and kind of build around what you want to do. I did forget to mention that if you want to mix colors or elements, I prefer to call them elements because that's what they are. Let's say you want to mix wind and ice, and let's say you have a 3-cost card. You can pay 2 ice, or you can pay 1 ice and 1 of another element and 1 of another element. As long as you pay at least 1 of whatever element it is, it doesn't matter what other elements you use to play that card. So as long as you pay 1 ice to play this Shiva or cast this Shiva, you could play 2 of whatever other element and it would not matter because you fulfilled the requirements of getting at least 1 ice. Summons also have EX Burst, which I'm about to go over now. So EX Burst only happens when the card goes from the top of your deck when you get dealt damage, up to 6 points of damage, because once you hit 7 points you lose. So here, this Alexander, EX Burst, choose 1 forward of cost 5 or more, break it. So how EX Burst works is it's the same as the ability as if you would have played the card. Only difference is now, because it's going to your damage zone, do the damage, there is no interaction. So you get to use the ability if you want to. You don't have to use it. It's a choice of yours. If you do, you nor your opponent can respond. So like this Ifrit, choose a forward, deal it 4K. Let's say they have a forward they're about to attack with that only has 4K and you are going to lose if they attacked with it. This Ifrit saves you and they can't do anything about it unless, like, obviously the card can be affected by damage or targeted by summons or abilities or whatever. So EX Burst is a really good thing. A lot of people don't like it because they said it requires no skill, but I mean, it is what it is. Crystals, there are a couple cards, let me see if I can find one, that allow you to use crystals. And crystals can't be interacted with by your opponent or you. They're kind of just a resource that you can use, and they are different from CP. CP is crystal points. Crystals are just crystals. So anytime you see like this little crystal emblem on a card, it's referring to these crystals. Like right here, it says when a job warrior of light other than Bart's enters the field, gain a crystal. If you have a crystal, Bart's gains 2,000 power. When a job warrior light you control is put from the field into the break zone, you may pay 3 crystals. When you do so, play it onto the field. This effect would only trigger once per turn. So this is kind of like a stockpile mechanic where there's nothing really to make you lose these crystals outside of you spending them. So once you have them, you kind of just have them, and that is the crystal mechanic as far as that goes. Limit breaks. Limit break is an extra deck mechanic. So if you've ever played Yu-Gi-Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh has an extra deck of 15 cards. Final Fantasy has an extra deck of 8 cards. So few things happen that are a little bit different. They're face down, so it's kind of like your deck. Only you can look at it, but you still have to pay this cost here. So right here, it would be Zack is a 3-cost fire. He is a forward. There are no backups. There's no summons, and I don't think there are any monsters at the moment that are limit breaks. But you would pay at least 1 fire and then 2 of whatever other element. And then you would look here at this limit break. Now this limit break number says 1. So you would flip over another card in your limit break deck face up and put it on the top of your limit break deck. And that pays for that cost. Some of them can say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. 7. I think Shanto's a limit break 7 here. So in this instance, you would flip over one other limit break card, preferably one you're not going to use or you think you're not going to use during that duel, because once it's flipped over, you no longer have access to it. It's used essentially. So Zack gets played. You paid that cost. You paid this cost, and then Zack comes to the field from the limit break deck, i.e. the extra deck. Limit break cards, if they're returned to the hand or they go to the break zone, they go to those zones essentially, but then they go straight back to the limit break deck face up, meaning you can't use it again. So you pay the cost, the fire cost, and whatever other element. You flip over an additional limit break card, and then that allows this Zack or whatever other card to go to the field. If he's returned to the hand or he gets destroyed and goes to the break zone, he goes back to your limit break deck face up. And that's pretty much the limit break mechanic. It's just really another way for you to have more cards to do more combos, or to make a better way for you to actually, win the game. If you didn't have access to a certain card, this gives you essentially access to 8 different cards, or 8 cards that you, as long as you can pay the cost for them, you can access them at any time. And this is the newest mechanic, Prime. The closest thing I can refer you to is, if you've ever played Yu-Gi-Oh, this is kind of like the XYZ mechanic. So right here, Clive, it's just a standard forward, just think of it as that way. It says priming, Ifrit 16. So you would pay 1 fire and then whatever else element you wanted to pay. You would search your deck and then put Ifrit on top of Clive. Now if you prime, Ifrit also has the name Clive, so just put a dash here and then Clive. And then Ifrit does not get any of these abilities that Clive has. He just gets the name Clive because he primed into Clive, and that would work with any other primer. So Joshua to Phoenix, Jill to Shiva, Benedicta to Garuda, Hugo to Titan, Sidolphus to Ramu, Dion to Bahamut, and Barnabas into Odin. But for this, Ifrit gets none of this. But if he was primed from Clive, the special ability, you can use a Clive card or another Ifrit 16 or Ifrit 16 card, because he carries the name of Clive in priming. If you don't prime, then he is just card name Ifrit 16. And that's pretty much the the gist of that. We went over EX burst. So here you got the forwards, the backups, monsters, summons, and this is what it looks like when they're doled. And then this gives you a generalization of the discard and how to produce CP. These are the keywords. Haste, which lets you attack or use your abilities with the dull icon pretty much whenever the card hits the field. Brave means that when it attacks, it does not dull, so it stays horizontal. First strike means that your card would attack first. So let's say you have a lightning and your opponent has an emperor. Lightning has first strike, so lightning would attack and not receive damage first because it's first strike. So this emperor with 9k, even though it has the same as lightning, would lose because lightning has first strike and they got to attack first without really having to be defensive. So first strike's really good. Search, anytime you search your deck, you have to reveal what it is. Drawing is not the same as searching, just keep that in mind. Freeze, if a character is frozen, it does not, if it's dull and frozen, it doesn't activate. If the card's just frozen and it's already active is being horizontal, then it doesn't really do anything. But let's say I attack with this, I can't say that, this Warrior of Light, so it would go dull. And then let's say on my opponent's turn they freeze it, so it's frozen. You can think of it as thawing out. So on my next turn during my active phase, instead of it going horizontal, it would stay vertical because it was frozen on my opponent's turn and it has to thaw out. Now if I'm able to activate it by my own means, then of course it's activated and that freeze wouldn't do anything. Back attack works just like summons and abilities. Let's see, do I have something that I can show back attack with? I think I do. Let's see, I think Sephiroth is back attack. Ice, oh, not EX burst. Whoops, sorry. Yeah, so back attack. Let's say your opponent attacked. You can pay the, in this, well, I guess I can explain this next. In this instance, you'd have to pay ice and lightning, so at least one ice, at least one lightning. You could play Sephiroth during the attack, then these abilities would go off, and then that still gives you a window to block. And that's a little advanced information, but just giving you an example of how back attack works. So back attack works just like a summon or an ability. Anytime that you could have priority in doing something, back attack is able to be used. Most of the time it's on forwards, but there are a few backups that have it as well. That's priming, that's limit breaking. We'll go there in a second just to give you a heads up. Light and dark cards, you can only have one on the field at a time. There are a couple cards like Cosmos, Spiritus, Materia, Chaos that let you have multiple light or dark cards on the field at the same time. You can only if you have light cards, you can't have dark, and vice versa. So that is also an advanced way to play the game. Yeah, you setting up the game. It's 50 card decks. You draw 5 cards at the start of the game. After you decide who goes first, you look at your hand. If you don't like it, you can mulligan, meaning you put all 5 cards that you drew, put it at the bottom of your deck, and then draw 5 more cards. You can only do that once. You don't have to do it. It's just your option, your prerogative. This explains the stack, and I'll put this information in the video description. So if I didn't explain it well, you can just click the link and you know, have the information for yourself. Um, Turn player of the start of the game only draws one card, and then every player after that draws two. So the first player of the first, like, so if I go first of the game, I draw one card. Then my opponent would draw two, and then on my next turn, I would draw two, and then it would continue to be draw two cards. I think that is it as far as party attack. Party attacks. Party attacks are like gang fights, really. They have to have at least one of the same element. And when they attack, they combine power, but they are still X amount separate cards. Like in this example, Tifa and Squire team up. Their party attack power becomes 9k. Let's say Vaughn decides to block. Since the blocking player is blocking, he decides how to split the damage. So if I know that I want to get rid of the Tifa, I just deal 4,000 of my 8,000 to Tifa, and then deal the other 4 to the Squire. I block the damage, Tifa goes to the break zone, and Squire only has 1,000 power left until the end of the turn. Once the turn's ended, all damage is reset. So you're pretty solid on that point. And I think that's it. You got a active phase, which activates all cards, draw phase, standby phase, main phase, battle phase, main phase 2, and then end phase. If cards activate in the end phase, neither player can respond. So the end phase effects kinda act like EX burst. Let's see what else we got here. And this just gives you a little breakdown of limit breaks. So if I didn't explain that well, this also gives you the rundown on that. And then priming gives you the rundown on that as well. So like I said, I'll link all of these. So if I didn't do a great job of explaining that, you'll have all that information available to read. And I'll also post the link to the full rule book, which I've studied a few times. Don't really need that one, and I think we're done with this. Okay. So, actually, great. I don't even know if it's gonna pull up the actual light. Okay, yeah, it does. So, how to play Final Fantasy and get better at the game. So I came from Yu-Gi-Oh! And I played fairies. Agents, Melodious, Trickstars, any fairies that I can get my hands on. Fairies were, to me, like the misunderstood type of card. And growing up, I was very misunderstood. I was fat. I was bullied. All the standard stuff that a typical nerd in the 90s went through. I was suicidal at some point in my young life, and I got introduced to Final Fantasy X by my cousin. And through that game, I started to, just venture out and study other cultures, study other things. And I just kept playing the games. I went back and started playing the old ones. And during this time, I was still playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, if you know anything about Yu-Gi-Oh!, unfortunately, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very elitist card game. A lot of the player base isn't very kind. A lot of the players are kind of rude. So I didn't fit in with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community. One, because I was playing fairies, and fairies were never really the meta deck. Two, I was coming from being a fat kid to not being a fat kid anymore. So like the change in my confidence was like kind of reverberating back and forth, and I didn't really know like who to be or how to be, and I wanted to be the best player, but you know, I was playing fairies and I got, you know, clowned a lot. It's like, well, fairies suck. You're never gonna be anything. But this Guardian Yatos is my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh card of all time. And it is a fairy. So the point of this story is there's gonna be times where you're probably gonna be told, and this is gonna go for any card game, that you're not good enough, or your deck's not good enough, or some form of derogatory statement that may make you question who you are as a person, who you are as a card player, who you are as a collector. The best advice that I can give you is learn who you are, even if that's in the face of adversity, and don't let that hold you back. Because of my love for fairies, I fell in love with Lightning as a character, and Lightning became my favorite Final Fantasy character of all time. Second's probably Caius and Cloud. Second, third. But the reason is Lightning plays like fairies. Fairies are very meticulous and they do a lot, but sometimes they don't necessarily work with others. So once I learned that, I started to research things about myself and see what I connected with. And I connect a lot with ice and lightning, the elements. And then once I did that, I started to research what elements do. Fires, it burns, it's quick. Wind is very strong once it gets a lot of turbulence. Water could be ice, water could be wind. Earth is very strong and sturdy. Light typically overpowers darkness unless the darkness is stronger. And I just started, putting all these things together. And once I learned that the elements of the game are still based off the elements of real life, it was easier for me to put all that together and make sense. Like, lightning's gonna zap really, really quick. That's why a lot of lightning cards, not just lightning the character, but lightning cards in general, they have haste, or they have a way to get to a card that has haste. Water kind of floods the board. Fire deals a lot of damage. Ice freezes a lot. So these things kind of help you understand not only who you are as a player, but who you are as a person. And once you learn who you are as a person, it doesn't matter what somebody else says about you. It doesn't matter what somebody else says about your deck, how you play the game, how you look at things. Because a lot of the top players of any card games aren't very humble. They aren't very nice. I haven't met a top player that I do like in any card game that I've played. And that's not shade. That's just me recognizing, reality for what it is. And I say all of that to say that I hope this information helps further you along. And I hope you get a sense of identity of yourself, because that is the key to unlocking everything you want to unlock in playing card games. When I won the store championship to go to regionals in 2024, I was playing mono ice, and my mono ice deck was not like everybody else's, and my decks will never be like anybody else, because I like thinking and making my own strategies. So when I went in, I knew I was going to be facing Scions of the Seventh Dawn, a super strong guy was playing 13. What else happened? Warrior of Light was there with the Refia and Chaos Arc. I'm at a huge disadvantage, because then if Chaos Arc gets to going, it's very hard for Mono Ice to keep up. And if Warrior of Light gets its board set up, it's very hard to keep up. And if I can't dull and freeze and discard the cards out of hand for 13, I'm screwed. And Scions of the Seven Dawn can just put out like 4 or 5 forwards pretty quick and still have like follow up. So knowing that, I just went with the deck I was most comfortable with, and I ended up getting first place. Now, it doesn't make me a better player than those people. It doesn't make me a worse player than those people. I just happen to have the better strategy at the given moment, and I just remind myself that I could easily have lost any of those matches and not have made it to regionals. Well, I guess it would be nationals. So just be humble, be kind, study, be on top of your game, learn what elements do in real life and apply that to the game, and learn what these characters actually did in their respective game, their categories. And that also helps a lot. And just be yourself, have fun, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't be a champion. Don't let anybody tell you that your deck won't win. You are the only version of yourself, and nobody can be you, and you can't be anybody else. So be yourself and have fun, and hopefully I see you out there on the battlefield, and hopefully this information helps you. Have a great 2025, and like I said, I hope to see you guys out there in some events, and hopefully Square Enix and Hobby Japan takes this game to another level so more people can enjoy it. I am New Never You, and if you don't know, now you do. Peace.